Okay. Well, the three contemporary magazine pieces, newspaper pieces that I put up are meant to be suggestive. That is, they're open ended. It's really, this class is not me sort of pointing things out to you, and you have to make your own connections. I'm kind of giving you materials that I hope are helpful. Reading McLuhan, reading Postman, reading the contemporary stuff, I think is meant to give us, I definitely have an agenda. I want to give us, all of us, some historical perspective on conceptualizing the effect of media on us and our culture and society and our politics and everything about our culture. But it's all really suggestive in the sense that I'm giving you materials that I think will be helpful, and you make the connections, right, in your discussions, in the essay you'll write at the end of the semester, et cetera. But especially these, that is, I chose really just, from my reading, things that I thought pointed up the fact that we've come a long way from Kant, and in some ways, in a very distressing way, we've come a long way from Kant. This is the Vox piece, America is facing an epistemic crisis, which is something that is eventually something I think we will get to. This is interesting. This is something that Kant would not have anticipated. This picture, which is an example of disinformation, an example of using a medium, using that public space, that space of the public use of reason that Kant sort of carves out, using it in bad faith. This banner is meant to give the impression that people who are protesting this right-wing speaker at Columbia are also supporting pedophiles, child molesters. And this is actually a banner that was unfurled by supporters of him to spread the idea that anyone who was against him was also for child molestation. And, anybody who's, I guess, thoughtful or critical or curious or whatever would sort of find out that it was disinformation. The truth of the matter is that once an image like that gets out onto the internet, it's going to have its effect. It's a type of slander, obviously. We have come to a point, this essay suggests, where, what kind of point have we come to where a large number of people in the United States still believe that Barack Obama was not born in the United States? That's one of the reasons that Trump is president. He made his political bones as what do you call him, a birther, somebody who tries to call into question, I would say in quite a racist way, the citizenship of our President Obama. One of the reasons that Trump is president is he got people to believe that nonsense, right? People believe crazy things. And one of one of the villains of the piece, a cheap huckster like Rush Limbaugh is able to have a tremendous influence on a certain part of the population. And, by getting them to believe crazy things, or maybe more importantly, getting them to doubt things that are, that are clearly factual, which is rough. But the really interesting, I guess, for us, media ethics, oh my God, Pizzagate. Look up Pizzagate and then read Kant and you'll cry. But this notion that in the modern internet allows people to live in a bubble, that is that kind of impenetrable, or a bubble that's impervious to skepticism, doubt, or the demands of fact. This is brought out quite nicely in this other piece, what Facebook did to American democracy, the Atlantic Monthly piece. The whole phenomenon of the Facebook feed, which is kind of this thing that was obviously set up by Facebook for its own purposes to keep people looking at Facebook, but also created, again, a bubble, whether it's a right-wing bubble, a left-wing bubble of any sort, where one is constantly reinforced in one's views rather than challenged. This Pariser, the Filter Bubble book, is a 2011 book warning about this phenomenon. These are things that Kant probably could not have possibly imagined. That is, that the public use of reason would be so fractured. I think he imagined a world which existed, I think, till quite recently, a world that was much more centralized in terms of where the discourse was, or what the outlines of respectable and acceptable and plausible social discourse were. I mean, the idea here is that we've broken up into tribes, really. I think that's one of the phrases that the Vox piece uses, the idea of a tribal epistemology. Is that what he uses? The notion that what's important is what supports the cause, not what happens to be true. Yeah, this idea of tribal epistemology. He says that mindset leads to what I call tribal epistemology, the systematic conflation of what is true with what is good for the tribe, which is kind of like exactly what Kant was, against. Right? Kant was for reason, for truth, for heading towards enlightenment, which meant, leaving behind prejudices, being willing to. Now, he saw the public use of reason as kind of being inoculated against untruth, being inoculated against prejudices, whereas what seems to be suggested here is that our public space, our public use of reason, at least to some degree, seems to be encouraging and hardening prejudice rather than breaking it down. One of the last and quite amazing subjects also that creates such a challenge to the sort of Kantian view of public discourse, the media. This is a New York Times Magazine piece on bots, which is really basically artificial intelligence beginning to creep into public discourse in different ways. And this was, of course, very prominent in the 2016 election, which was I guess, I don't know, maybe it was the first Facebook election. Maybe 2012 was, I don't know, maybe even 2008. But the election in which, social media, one of Trump's own people in the Trump administration, in an internal memo, says that Russian interference through social media, through the election to Donald Trump. I mean, that's interesting. I don't know if it's true, but one of his own people. That is, that where basically disinformation propaganda propagated through social media like Facebook actually had some effect, there's no doubt, on the 2016 election. And much of that was bots. And what's interesting is that, can you imagine Kant being told that at a certain point, the public use of reason would be, one of the participants in that would be an artificial intelligence, a bot, which is just a machine, obviously, meant to simulate a person with the intention of influencing opinion. But really quite an amazing thing to think that some of the participants now, and perhaps in the future more in a more important way, will actually not be human beings. So these all are just, I think, suggestions, things to get us to start thinking about, some of the problems perhaps in our world, our contemporary world, in terms of the kind of public discourse that mass communications technology or the mass media facilitates.